Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. The beautiful young lady in the blue, China Rosenzweig, texted me, emailed me. She really called me many times, and I've been ignoring her for quite some time, that she wants to speak because she is a guest speaker. But I have many people that want to speak at the show, so I ignored her for a while. She was tenacious, and she got through to me. And she said, check him out online. So I typed in his name, I Googled his name, and it came up everywhere. Yeah. He writes in papers, he's got podcasts, he speaks all over the country. And I read that his views on Israel are to the little bit to the right of Genghis Khan, which I happen to like, by the way. Now, I read wonderful things about him, and then after emailing him and Googling him and seeing that he really is a well-known speaker, and he speaks all over the country, all over Israel, and he writes all over, then I found out that he works together with Tuli Nadel's son. That was it. We all remember Tuli Nadel? Yeah. Sweetheart of a man, and his kids are wonderful. So when I found out that Avi works with Tuli Nadel's son, that was a should have made heaven. And I said, for someone to come and speak on our show, give us, and he's part of Sahel, he works, he understands the country, he's got his pulse and everything going on, he speaks English perfectly. To hear something about Israel from someone that spends time in Sahel, and someone that cares about Israel, and spends his time traveling to educate us on what's really going on behind the scenes and between the lines of the papers. It's my pleasure to introduce Avi.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I really, really appreciate that that introduction. And it is wonderful to be in this Kehila. I mean, I just mentioned to Sharna before, I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I grew up in New York City, like Manhattan, New York City. I think this is the first time in my life I've stepped into Staten Island. It's like when you grow up in Manhattan, it's like that's New York. There's nothing else besides Manhattan when you grow up in New York. But yes, I have the zchut of seeing Tuli Nadel every once in a while when he comes into our office. And the real zchut is working with his son. We've been partners for 12 years already in terms of using the internet and video to try to get the truth out to the world about Israel, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, that is ignored by the media, including, unfortunately, most of our own Jewish media sources. So let me start with a little Dvar Torah, and then I'll go into who I am, what I do together with Avi Nadel, and then get into the talk to try to give you some analysis plus inspiration about what's really going on the streets of the land of Israel with the people of Israel today. So, tiny Dvar Torah, we're in the Parashiot, the Torah portions talking about Yosef HaTzadik and the brothers. And when you think about it, it's really miraculous, the fact that Am Yisrael was saved by this story. Like, it could have been the end. It could have been end of story. Right? Vayigash, zeh, no more Am Yisrael. Torah could have ended. Why are we saved? Well, one, because of Yosef, obviously. But Yosef would not have saved Am Yisrael if it wouldn't have been for the tshuva gemura of Yehuda. Right? We're called Jews. We're from Judea, from the Judean tribe. Right? Malchut Yehuda. And over the past couple of parashiot, we see the mahapach. We see the turnaround that Yehuda did. And according to the Rambam, what's tshuva gemura? It's someone who, if he's in the same exact situation where he once sinned, but yet he does not do that sin again. Well, Yehuda was responsible for, in the end, selling Yosef. And what's the tshuva gemura? Well, he actually had two tshuva gemura in a sense. One is in terms of his taking responsibility for Tamar, right? Any normal person would run away and deny any responsibility for what he had done with his daughter-in-law, but he took responsibility. So that's one sense of tshuva gemura of Yehuda, and the other one is he was willing to risk his own life and switch his place in prison for Binyamin to save Binyamin, after he was basically the brother responsible for the selling off of Yosef. So Am Yisrael was saved because of the spiritual well-being, which included the leadership of Yehuda. Together, obviously, he did it with his brothers. Right? He led, but it was together with them, with that unity and the spiritual renewal within Yehuda, Am Yisrael was saved. And we have the continuation of the Torah for another 4 books, not just ending in Parshat Vayigash. And I start with that for a very important reason, because the bottom line of what I'm going to touch upon in what I speak tonight is about the spiritual revolution taking place within Am Yisrael today, and specifically within Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, because that's not really written up in the headlines of any of the media sources. We're talking about the war, the daily aspects of the war, what's happening in the war, the good things in the war, the bad things in the war, the holy idea of soldiers that were being lost in the war, being injured in the war. Not as much as being talked about the underlying spiritual revolution, and that we're going to touch upon this evening. So who am I, and what am I doing, and what do I do with Avi Abelow? We run a nonprofit organization called the 12 Tribe Films Foundation, and I actually forgot to put the piece of paper with the QR code. Anyone who would like to donate towards what we do, b'simcha, we welcome donations to help support our work, so I'll put it out afterwards. And the main product that we put out on a daily basis is a program called The Pulse of Israel, which is my daily vlog podcast of giving an emunah-based, a faith-based understanding of current events that are happening to the Jewish people and the land of Israel today. So hundreds of thousands of subscribers all over the world. I mean, I'm even shocked every single place I've been to on this trip. Phoenix, Arizona, 3 different communities, Los Angeles, South Florida, Cooper City, Florida. I never even heard there was a Cooper City, Florida before I was there. Every single place people come up to me, say they're subscribers. No clue, but Baruch Hashem, it's wonderful. The wonders of the internet that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. I'm a big believer in being Makadesh L'chol. Right? So the internet's there. Some people could use it for not good ways. We try to use it for good ways to help people. If they're already wasting time, at least use the time wisely, and it's not being wasted. Give them some Jewish content. Interview people all the time, like interviewing experts or people Jews doing good things, or even non-Jews doing good things for the world, for the Jewish people, for Israel, and daily aspects of the current events. One issue that is really, really important to me, that I believe is the underlying precept of what we do, and why I spend the time doing this day in and day out, is to help strengthen people's connection to the land of Israel, understanding that a strong connection to the land of Israel helps one strengthen one's Jewish identity. So there are plenty of non-Jews who listen as well, to strengthen them in their understanding. But the main purpose is specifically to reach out to fellow Jews all over the world, and especially to young Jews, and help them have a better understanding of the land of Israel today and what we're going through, and then strengthen their Jewish identity. Well, one of the biggest issues taking place today that we're basically on the forefront about has to do with the growing anti-Semitism that's taking place. And I'm a big believer that, and I've been saying this for years, that the term fighting anti-Semitism really is a misnomer. Someone who hates you, you're not going to change them from hating you, and if they're growing in numbers, you're not really going to change that. But the best way for a Jew to deal with growing anti-Semitism, or to fight the anti-Semitism, is to have more pride in the Jewish identity, have more pride in you being a Jew, having more pride in your connection to the land of Israel, and what the land of Israel truly stands for, not what's being put out in the media, to be able to learn how to deal with this new and growing reality of anti-Semitism all around us, this Jew hatred all around us. And the really scary thing is thinking about the youth, the collegiates, the teenagers, because they don't know what in the world is going on. They don't know where it came from. right? And the shocking thing for especially American Jews, and especially for the youth, but I think not just the youth, is how October 7th, Simchat Torah, what happened, any normal person would think, oh my God, we, the Jewish people, just experienced the worst tragedy since the Holocaust. Over 1,200 innocent Jews, women, babies, children, grandmothers, grandfathers, massacred, mutilated, beheaded, burned, like a horrendous tragedy. Horrendous tragedy. Any well-meaning person who talks about values and justice and human rights and equal rights and oppressed, of course they should have sympathy for the Jewish people to what we just experienced. And not only did that, whatever sympathy might have been there for a day or two, not only did it disappear from a large swaths of the population that surround us, but anti-Semitism is now growing like never before at a meteoric rise as a result of the massacre that happened to us. And you have many Jews today, and especially the youth, but not just, scratching their heads like, what in the world is going on? And they have no clue. They have no clue how to explain it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I know even from adults who've said, like, all of a sudden, their friends and family or coworkers who they protested with or spoke about the same value system of whatever injustices are out there, and all of a sudden, they're not receiving that sympathy or support, and they're alone. And they're saying, I'm now realizing who my true friends are, and plenty of people who they thought were friends are not standing with them as a representative of the Jewish people, and they're alone. And if adults are going through this, kal v'chomer, even more so, the youth are totally confused and alone. And from my perspective, unfortunately, especially the youth, they have not been given the tools to understand the true situation of the Jewish people in the state of Israel today, to know what's going on. And I'll give the following example. Why should a college student who happens to be Jewish or an Israel supporter, not Israeli, maybe never been to Israel, definitely not involved in making policies in the state of Israel, why should they be attacked for what's going on in Israel on their college campus? Well, to me, it's simple, and I've been talking about this for decades. It's because the whole anti-Israel agenda is not about Israel. It's latent Jew hatred. I mean, and it's historically so. Anyone who really understands the creation of the cause called Palestine, it was really created by the communist Soviet Union in 1964 as a way to destroy Israel and hurting the West, the United States of America. It was never about a historic people called Palestinians, because there is no historic people called Palestinians. It's all an overall strategy set by the communists in the 1960s, usurping the Arab-Muslim sentiments and religion to try to destroy the Jewish people in our homeland. It's always been about Jew hatred. But our kids aren't taught that. They don't know that. And they think, oh my God, if I just say I support the two-state solution, they'll like me and I'm with them. But no. And I'll give the following example. I was on Berkeley University 12 years ago as part of a delegation to help the Jewish college students deal with the anti-Israel protests during anti-Israel apartheid week, right? And back then, Berkeley was the #1 anti-Semitic university in America. And it's very sad. Today, if I'm not mistaken, according to the official statistics, Columbia University is #1. And I say that as a Columbia grad. I had a graduate of Columbia Graduate School. And my father-in-law was the director and then the founder of the Hillel of Columbia University. very Jewish college, and Dafka, Columbia today is number one. But okay, I was in Berkeley 12 years ago. Back then, Berkeley was the number one anti-Semitic university. And in the middle of the campus is an apartheid wall, and they do street theater, right? You have the students there dressed like Israeli soldiers, fake guns, pulling people's hair, throwing them to the ground, shooting at them, right? Trying to influence all the other students on campus how evil is the Jewish state of Israel and the Jewish people are, right? And the Jewish students in the Hillel, they were there with their signs. And this is 12 years ago. And what signs did they have? Israel wants peace. Israel created the cherry tomato. Israel is the startup nation. Israel gives aid to Turkey. Right? All these different things showing like how wonderful we are and how peaceful we are as a people. And I'm standing there thinking, we have two different games going on. One, people are playing chess and the other are playing checkers. They're not even on the same playing field. Like our enemies use narratives of justice and that we don't even have a right to exist. And the information we are giving, that even most of our educational institutions are giving over to our Jewish students, to our kids, is basically ignoring the true just aspect of the case and instead focusing on we're a peaceful people, we want peace. Which that's true, but that doesn't help. And hence our students are left powerless in knowing how to deal with it. So I went up to the students, I said, okay, make me a sign. And they said, write this: I'm an IDF soldier, ask me anything. And I took that sign, and then I went into the middle of the street theater and stood there like that. And little by little, the students were coming up to me and asking me questions. And I was able to deflect all the attention and the lies that the anti-Israel protesters were doing. And I explained to the students, listen, you have to understand, your target audience is not the protesters. They're brainwashed. They hate you. Your target audience is to just have enough information to be able to tell the passerbyers, whether Jewish or non-Jewish, to know that these guys are clowns and they don't know what they're talking about, so that they don't pay attention to them. And what I'm in the process of doing and trying to get with the programming we're doing and reaching out with specific programs for collegiates and the youth is to give them that information that they're not getting really from anywhere else, because no one wants to touch stuff that's not politically correct. So we touch the stuff that's not politically correct. I like to say that we say the politically incorrect truth in order to empower the youth of today and the students. So even if they can't walk around with signs because unfortunately it's too dangerous, literally, for our kids to walk around on campus with proud Jewish, proud Israel signs, that's to the extent things have gotten, and unfortunately it's going to get worse and much worse, quicker than we imagine. But at least I want them to be able to inside, be able to have an internal signage saying, I'm a proud Jew, ask me anything, so that whatever's happening around them, they will be able to be a presence to help fellow Jews and fellow students feel confident enough in their Jewish identity and in the Jewish state of Israel and what's going on, to not be swayed by all the anti-Israel arguments and lies going on. Because ultimately, and this is what I always tell them whenever I speak to students, when they're being attacked on campus in the name of Israel, meaning anti-Israel, pro-Palestine stuff, they're not attacking Israel, they're attacking their Jewish identity. And we are losing Jewish kids every single day. Every single day. Because they're being swayed to no longer have pride in their Jewish identity. And not just non-religious students, but plenty of our own religious students who grow up with 12 years of yeshiva education and even go to Israel for a year or two. And I know this personally, from personal friends my age. And if it's happened to my age, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore either, I just had my 50th birthday on Parshat Toldot, it's happening on a much greater scale to the younger ages. Hence, that is one of the major missions that we're involved in right now and getting off the ground, to be reaching out and empowering the youth, and not starting in college, but starting in high school, because college is too late. And it's going after the high school kids, those who are willing enough to want to be educated about what's really going on with Israel and the Jewish state today, and then be able to use their voices and use their social media channels to impact their networks with the truth, and not be afraid, so that by the time they do get old enough to go to college, they're already prepared, knowing what's going to be happening and having enough information. So that's a little background of myself, what I'm doing, and an introduction to everything else that you're about to hear about the situation today. Let me start with Simchat Torah. All right, I'm sure people have heard different stories, or maybe you had different speakers in the community from Israel. So I'll give you our perspective of what we went through. So my family and I live in Efrat. I don't know if anyone's been here, familiar with the community, in Yehuda and Shomron, Gush Etzion, right next to Beit Lechem. I'm zoche to have my porch look over Beit Lechem into Yerushalayim. I see Har HaBayit. Be'ezrat Hashem, you should all join me and also have that same zchut. And Simchat Torah morning, October 7th, my wife wakes me up. She goes, "Did you hear that?" I'm like, "Did I hear what?" I didn't hear anything. Two minutes later, boom. All right, I heard it. All right, no siren, but we heard the rockets. So I'm like, okay, something's going on. It was 8 o'clock. I had to get dressed to go to Minyan anyway. Baruch Hashem, we're blessed to daven in Rav Shlomo Katz's shul, like a 5-minute walk away. Get dressed, run outside. Right outside the door to my building, I see a friend on his phone. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, "We're at war. This is 8:30 in the morning. We're at war. Rockets are being shot all over the country, and Hamas has infiltrated communities. People are being massacred." This is at 8:30 in the morning, Simchat Torah. Again, we're very security conscious in Efrat. Not every community or every city knew what was going on Simchat Torah, because not every religious community was connected to their phones. But because we're very security conscious and plenty of people who work for security positions here, so we already knew. 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, we already knew what was going on. It was already a very depressed mood starting the morning of Simchat Torah. I run home, I tell my wife, I tell my kids, give them the update. I'm like, all right, I'm going to run down to my parents to see how they're doing, because we already had sirens in Efrat and Gush Etzion. We had to run to our safe room. Ran down the hill, blessed to live only 5 minutes away from my parents, checked in on them. Another siren, I went in the safe room with my parents. They're okay, Baruch Hashem. Ran back home. I said, okay, we have to be near our safe rooms right now, which means you can't go to a shul like more than a minute and a half away from a safe room, a security room. So I told my kids, all right, we're going to go to the shul right across the street instead of going to Rav Shlomo Katz's shul. Finished Musaf. And then there was a decision that had to be made by the Gabbai. Are we going to dance Hakafot or not? Because we knew a massacre was happening. We knew soldiers were being called up. We knew we're at war. Very depressed state. Very sad. Like, are we going to dance Hakafot right now? So, Baruch Hashem, the decision was made to have one Hakafa. One Hakafa. And I said Baruch Hashem, meaning as opposed to none at all. We had that one hakafa. It was mamish, the most spiritual, uplifting hakafa in my life, and I think not just for myself, for many others in shul that morning. And again, most people already had left shul, because not everyone lives within a minute and a half of the shul. We were like 40, 50 guys left in shul, with some women and children. And again, it wasn't just a dancing and singing of happiness and joy for the Torah and our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it was an extremely heartfelt, deep, screaming out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save us, because we already knew how horrible the situation was. And it was unbelievable. And so much so, it's not even me speaking and saying this, like a woman, a mother came up to me afterwards. I'm the father of 4 boys. One is in the army, he was sent to Gaza immediately. But so I had 3 boys at home, so we're very prominent whenever there's simcha going on, singing and dancing going on. So one of the mothers came up to me, she goes, I thought the decision to have hakafa was wrong, not appropriate, but after we had that really spiritual uplifting hakafa, I'm so glad we did it. It was just the right thing, and Baruch Hashem, we did it. Right? That's how we started our morning Simchat Torah. Get home, our son calls us. He was off for Shabbat. He's in his mandatory service, and he was already called down to go down to the Gaza border already in the morning. I'm in Miluim. I'm a reserve soldier, still serving, even though I don't have to serve anymore. So I was on my phone waiting to be called up. My older son, also he's in the reserves now. He's waiting to be called up, and I was called up already Mincha time. So Mincha on Simchat Torah, I'm already in Miluim. My unit is in charge of the Gush Etzion area, which we'll get to in a second. And I took a break from serving in my Miluim to start coming here to America and speak to Jewish communities to connect them with what's going on. Because in my sense, I believe this is a type of Miluim also for Am Yisrael. But I'll be going back when I get back to Israel. That was what we experienced on Simchat Torah. I want to give you the positive. I want to give you some of the positive, okay? Because it doesn't come out as much, and I'm sure some of you have seen some of these videos. Have you seen the videos of the different minyanim taking place in the Gaza Strip? Of the Torah being read? Of singing and dancing taking place, of the chesed taking place all over the country with ultra-Orthodox, secular, Dati Leumi all together. It's like an unbelievable process is taking place with Am Yisrael today. And it's not getting enough attention. In Israel, we feel it. All right? We feel it, even though even in Israel, the media is against us and trying to divide us. It's very, very demoralizing, the daily media coverage in Israel. It's basically like the American media. It's all about demoralizing. But the people are strong, and the people are coming together. Just a video a few days ago, and this is like Yemot Mashiach. Like if you really think about this, a Haredi soldier returned home, got out of the elevator, and who greeted him? His family, the neighbors greeted him while he's there coming home from the army in his uniform. Do you know how unbelievable that is? Because just a number of months ago, most soldiers who are Haredi, ultra-Orthodox in the army, if they do serve, if they come to their communities, they have to take their uniform off. Because some people in their community would spit on them or do bad things to them or scream at them. Well, that's changed. I can't say it's changed in 100% of those communities, but it's changed. Hundreds of Haredi men are joining the army each and every day right now. They're not necessarily going out to the front lines, but they don't have to go to the front lines. They're going to go do where Am Yisrael needs them, in whatever position the army sends them to do. But the fact that en masse, they are joining the army. Because the sentiment right now of Klal Yisrael in the land of Israel is, we're one. And I just want to take a perspective. I want to take a step back a second. 3 months ago, we, the Jewish people, Bichlal, and specifically in Israel, were so divided. Just 3 months ago. And again, I want to give you perspective. Part of my program, the past year, I was trying to inform people about the truth about the whole judicial reform and the anti-judicial reform protest movement. And I was explaining as much as I could and pleading with people, please do not listen to the media. Do not listen to the Jewish organizational leaders either. Pleading. Understand, they're talking about civil war. To have a civil war, you need 2 sides. What we have in Israel is one side and one side show. A tiny minority with a lot of power, with a lot of connections with the media, pushing division, pushing Am Yisrael to be divided. And they were succeeding. But on the ground, we are one people, very much united. And again, I'm just taking you back. Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah. You guys remember the news about Israel and Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah? You were talking about a mahalach of potentially forbidding public prayer on Yom Kippur in the Jewish state of Israel, and public dancing on Simchat Torah in the Jewish state of Israel. Can you imagine? And people were really led to believe that that there was a big tzibur in Israel that wanted that. But you look at the Jewish people today, and then you see that was all a sheker. That was all a lie. Everyone was being played. The majority of the Jewish people in the land of Israel are strongly connected to a Jewish identity, regardless of how religious their personal lives are on a daily basis. I don't remember the specific stats, but over 90% of Jews in Israel have some type of Pesach Seder. Over 90% of Jews in Israel do something and stop on Yom Kippur. There is a strong Jewish identity of the vast majority of Jews in Israel, not just the religious. Traditional and those who are not as traditional. That's the reality. So when we were being played and being told, we should forbid public prayer on Yom Kippur, we should forbid public dancing on Simchat Torah, that's not the ruach of the nation. That's a tiny minority playing and manipulating the emotions of the people via the media to divide us where there really wasn't a place to divide us, because what we see today, where you have auditoriums of Israeli soldiers singing Ani Mamim together, and I promise you, out of those 1,000 or so soldiers in that auditorium, this is a video from just a few days ago, a minority of them are religious soldiers, but they're all singing Ani Mamim together. That is Am Yisrael, and that's the Am Yisrael that was 3 months ago also. But it was being pushed into the ground by a greater agenda of a tiny minority who have a lot of power and powerful microphones. And it's important that I point these things out to you in order that you internalize the koach that we have today in Am Yisrael. It is unfortunate that it is coming out publicly in this way as a result of the worst tragedy to befall us as a people since the Holocaust. But this is the real Am Yisrael. And yes, as time goes on and the war continues or the war ends, are things going to be exactly like this? No, things are not going to be exactly like this. Are things going to go back to where it was 3 months ago? No, it won't. Are there going to be powers out there going to try to divide us again? Yes, they will. And again, I consider myself a student of Jewish history. In every single generation of our existence, our biggest enemies have been within, who've weakened us. And we just had the Hanukkah story, right? I mean, again, halavai, our kids really learned the Hanukkah story at a historic level, not just in 8 nights and the Maccabim won and the miracle of the oil, but understanding that the Maccabim who won were a tiny minority of Am Yisrael, and yet they still won. And it wasn't just a war against the Greek Syrians; it was an internal battle against our fellow Mityavnim. But they were a minority. As opposed to today, you look at the Jewish people today, we are in such a better position than the Maccabim. Because the proud Jews of today are a much larger majority, at least in Israel. Okay, I can't talk about America, but in terms of proud Jews in Israel, are a majority of our people, and we're strong. And if the Maccabim were able to overcome, thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, back in the Hanukkah story, being a minority, a tiny minority of Am Yisrael, to overcome both the internal and external challenges to survive as a people. We're doing it today, folks. All right? And that's a message that I really, really want to get across. We are winning this war. And I'm not just talking about the war against Hamas, but I'm talking about the spiritual war, which is even more important than the war against Hamas. And it's because of the spiritual battle that we are going to win as a people. That yes, that's the true koach of how we're going to be beating Hamas and all of our enemies. So that's very important to take into consideration. And the final story I want to give to really exemplify this is 1 week into the war, there was an Instagram post that was going viral of of an exchange between a father and a daughter. I don't know how many of you have seen this or heard about it. And the daughter just recently joined the Israeli army, and the father messaged his daughter saying, you're now in the army? Great place to find a shidduch. A good Torah yid, and he's in the army, wonderful values, amazing, right? And the daughter messaged the father back, and she goes, Abba, that would have been true a week ago, but now all the Israeli soldiers are wearing kippot and wearing tzitzit. You don't know who's religious anymore. Okay? Now, that's a little exaggeration, but the truth is, yes, that little story is exemplary of what we are experiencing. And yes, a lot of more soldiers, whether they're wearing kippot or wearing tzitzit or going and joining tefillot, whether during the week or putting on tefillin, and it's not just soldiers, it's also other Israelis who are not necessarily soldiers. There is a spiritual revolution taking place in Am Yisrael today, and to me at least, it is a sign that we're going to be winning. Because the true koach of Am Yisrael, the true koach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking for us, is our internal spiritual strength. I'm a big believer in giving over the message, Hashem oz la'amo yitein, Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom. Right? When are we going to get this peace? When are we going to get Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom? When is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to bless us with peace? When we have Hashem oz la'amo yitein, when we own our oz. And our oaths, and there's two sides to that oath, to that power of the Jewish people. One is, yes, we have to be able to stand up and defend ourselves with guns and physical weapons. But the other side, just as important, if not more important, is the spiritual well-being and pride in our identity as a Jewish people connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's those two things. That only when we stand up for ourselves with both of those two things will HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us with true peace. And for decades, we have been pushed the message that if we weaken our Jewish identity, we give away our homeland, that will bring peace. What did we get? We got more terror, more death, more sadness, more depression, pushing peace further and further away. So yes, to me, giving up parts of the land of Israel, it's not a practical geopolitical thing. It's giving up on our Jewish identity and weakening our Jewish identity, which doesn't bring peace any closer. It pushes peace further and further away. And now I'm going to go a little real politic with you for a second. I'm going to give two examples of how even Israeli politicians knew this. Okay? I'm going to take you back to 1996. Everyone remember what elections we had in Israel in 1996? We had Shimon Peres against Bibi Netanyahu. Right? Shimon Peres was interviewed by the Israeli press after Netanyahu beat him, and he lost. And this is a quote from Shimon Peres in 1996 in the Israeli papers. Again, it was in Hebrew. I don't know if it's ever been written up, if that interview was written in English. And Shimon Peres said specifically, the Jews won and the Israelis lost. Okay? And again, I don't know whether it's Yossi Beilin or Ron Pundak. One of them, the architects of the Oslo Accords back in 1993, and I'm sorry for going political, but it's about the spiritual. To me, it's the spiritual. It's not political, it's the spiritual. And the architects back then of the Oslo Accords, I think it was Ron Pundak, was interviewed years later, and he said, yeah, the Oslo Accords was never about peace. It was about normalizing Israel. and weakening the Jewish character of the Jewish state. It's never been about peace. It's been a spiritual battle from the beginning. The whole peace process has always been a tool of the spiritual battle. What kind of state of Israel are we going to have? Are we going to have a proud Jewish state of Israel that's connected to our ancestral identity and our ancestral homeland? Or are we going to have Israel to Israelis like France is to the French, and Italy is to Italians, etc., etc., etc. It's always been about that, and they've told us that. But too many Jews and too many Jewish leaders and Jewish organizations have preferred to ignore that and been thinking, oh, it's about trying to achieve peace. And then the second example, actually, Yair Lapid, going back to 2005. He wrote an op-ed, again, Hebrew, I don't know if it's ever been translated into English, but he said straight out that the Gaza disengagement was not about achieving peace, it was about punishing the national religious public and putting them in their place. Again, a spiritual battle. It's always been about a spiritual battle. And the way we win is by us realizing that, internalizing that, and owning it and strengthening it. And Am Yisrael is on our side. Especially, and it's up to us, the religious. We're the ones that come with the most baggage of this spiritual identity. And everyone's waiting for us to stand up proudly, proud of our Jewish identity and for the truth about the land of Israel. No one else is going to do it. It's us. And as our community is quiet about it, and our community is politically correct about it, we're letting down the rest of the Jewish people. Because they're not having anyone lead them. But we have the knowledge, we have the books, we have the learning. And we're not maximizing our responsibility with the knowledge and the spiritual connection that we're blessed to have because of our religious lifestyle and knowledge. So now I'm going to go, now that I've touched upon the importance of this, the underlying spiritual process and revolution that's taking place that I'm so positive about, I'm going to jump to the actual war we're experiencing. But the one anecdote I just wanted to point out, and I think you're hearing it from me, but I'll just spell it out. It's in Israel where we feel this much more. It's in Israel where we're experiencing this unity and this spiritual revolution much more. That's because if you ask me, that's where we're supposed to be. That's the natural habitat of the Jew, the natural culture of the Jew, the natural place where we as a people feel like a people. Hence, you want to feel this? Come home and join us. But I'll get back to that. The war right now is taking place on the Gaza border. Everyone asks me, when's this war going to end? All right? Now, to understand when this war is going to end, I'm going to go back to the Hanukkah story. Because I'm not the smartest guy on the block, but I like learning from good Jews who know their stuff. And one of the best historians that I like learning from is an educator, tour guide named Gershon HaKohen from Hebron. I don't know if anyone's familiar. And I remember he once gave a seminar when I was in the army, when I was in Miluim, about the Hanukkah story. And he asked us, how long did the Hanukkah story take place? We light the candles for 8 nights. How long did the Hanukkah story take place from beginning to end? Any guesses? Huh? 3 years? 10 years? Okay, now I thought I remember him saying 75 years. It could be he said 25 years. Regardless, whether 25 or 75, the important thing to internalize about the Hanukkah story is that it was long. It wasn't 8 days, it wasn't a year, it wasn't even 10 years. And it was a war with a lot of battles. Like we celebrate the rededication of the Beit HaMikdash and the relighting of the menorah of the Chanukiah, thinking like, that's it. We liberated Har HaBayit and we started the Avodah in the Beit HaMikdash, right? Wrong. The Maccabim liberated Arabite, and they lost Arabite. They liberated Arabite, and they lost Arabite. It was a lot of battles, a lot of wins, and a lot of losses. But it only ended after whether it was 25 years or 75 years. That's the Hanukkah story. Why is that context important? Because we have been taught in our own schools, in our own narratives today, that we had the War of Independence in 1948. We had the War of Attrition in the 1950s. We had the Six-Day War in 1967. We had the Yom Kippur War in 1970. The Lebanon War in 1982, etc., etc., etc. And what I want people to start to understand is we're right now in the 76th year of the War of Independence. It never ended. We have the same enemy, the same goal to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. And we are deluding ourselves and misunderstanding our reality today by not understanding that this is exactly the same as the Hanukkah story. We're in the 76th year of the War of Independence. It totally changes your understanding of our reality. So right now, when is this war going to end? Well, I can't give you a date because I'm not a Navi. But I will tell you when this battle is going to end, this time around. And that's going to end when everyone who is from the communities down south on the Gaza border is able to move back home without any fear that what happened on Simchat Torah can ever happen again. But not just that. This battle is not going to end until everyone up north is able to move back to their home, because hundreds of thousands of residents up north have been evacuated from their homes. And it's not going to end until they can move back to their homes without the fear that Hezbollah will do the same thing, that Hezbollah is taken care of on the northern border. So no matter how much pressure the Biden administration puts on Israel, no matter how much international pressure, no matter how much whatever Israeli politicians pressure to end this war, they won't be able to end it until everyone goes back to their homes. And I hope that happens sooner than later. But now, I'm going to go even further, because like I told you before, my IDF reserve duty, I'm part of a unit in Gush Etzion. And why are we called up in Gush Etzion? Why are we called up throughout Judea and Samaria, Yehuda and Shomron? Because many Israelis have woken up to understand that there is no difference between the Arab Muslims in Gaza than the Arab Muslims in Judea and Samaria. I mean, I've known this forever, but other people have deluded themselves into thinking otherwise. But so many of Israelis, they have woken up and realized, oh my God. I mean, plenty of news items have gotten out there, truthfully, of how workers from Gaza, who were supposedly given security checks to then be allowed to work in Israel, whether they acted as spies, giving actual information about the families they worked for in the Gaza envelope communities, the names of the families, how many children they have, if they have a dog or they don't have a dog, that level of detail, where certain things were on army bases. Like, here, they were innocent Arab Muslim workers from Gaza, but they weren't so innocent. And not only that, there were plenty of videos going around showing not just Hamas terrorists with guns coming through the fence, but children, teenagers, old men in canes. Hey, those are your innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip. And I personally was down in the kibbutz of Kfar Aza a few weeks ago, and the residents were giving us a tour. And one of the houses, he pointed out, he said that house was burnt down by civilians. Thank God the family escaped. But these Gaza civilians without guns, not Hamas terrorists, were involved in killing Jewish families. Not the terrorists. The civilians. So many Israelis today understand that it's not just them. There's a big fight in Israel today because the ironically so, the heads of the security services are still in the October 6th mindset. And they want Israel to allow workers from Judea and Samaria to come and work in communities in Yudan, Shomron, and throughout Israel. And you have people up in arms. They're like, are you crazy? Did we not learn that you can't bribe your enemy with money and jobs to not use terror against us? They're not interested in the money and the jobs. They're interested in preparing to do bad things to us Jews. I mean, I could talk specifically from my community of Efrat. There's a huge uprising of residents that we're fighting the security establishment. Because the security establishment wants to go back to October 6th policies of allowing them to come into Efrat. And plenty of families, especially mothers, they're allowing the mothers to be at the forefront, are like, no way, we never want them in here again. Because we know the reality of our situation. That's the reality of what we're experiencing in Israel. Right? But I like looking at the positive. And what's the positive? The positive is, Baruch Hashem, people are waking up. They're waking up to reality. We're no longer deluding ourselves into our illusion of our situation. But they're waking up to reality. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. Because we're waking up to reality, we're better prepared. Regardless if our leaders are on the same page or not, the people are prepared. So, this wasn't just a wake-up call for the Jews of Israel. Like I touched upon when I started, this was a wake-up call for Jews worldwide. Because all of a sudden, as I said, Jews are realizing, oh my God, we're not getting sympathy, we're getting greater hatred. We're getting protests in New York City, in Los Angeles. I was just in Los Angeles. I had a screening of my movie. I don't know how many of you know. I made a movie about Gush Katif called Home Game, the last youth basketball tournament that took place in Gush Katif, the summer of 2005. Love to come back and screen it, to be here again to speak to you, Rabbi. Because this movie has to be seen now more than ever, because it helps give context to understanding today's events and how we got here. And the place that hosted the screening, one, would not allow the address to be publicized, and two, would not allow publicity on social media. Because they're afraid. They're afraid. Jewish organizations today are afraid to publicize certain events, because it'll invite the wrong crowds who are unhinged and create havoc. That's the reality. And it's a very sad reality, but that's the reality. And it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. They are a growing threat. And they're a growing threat because university administrations, university professors, politicians are not willing to do what is necessary to say that it is wrong and that it is evil. Whether it should be illegal or not, different, whatever, but there's no one willing to stop it. So, I mean, I'm a parent, but anyone has to just read everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten to know how you deal with bullies. And the second you let a bully get away with what they're doing, well, they're just going to continue and get worse. That is the reality today with the Jewish people, not just in America, in Europe, etc. And that's why there is, I believe, record numbers of Jews. Again, this is New York, so I don't know if I'm stepping in a minefield here, but at least in other parts of America, record numbers of Jews right now applying for gun licenses and buying guns. Because all of a sudden they realize, okay, even if we would call the police, it's going to take a while for the police to come. Even if they do come. And we have to know how to protect ourselves. Right? So it's a way. So what October 7th, Simchat Torah, happened is also a wake-up call for world Jewry. Which again, I'm looking as a positive because this is the reality. And then there's the third wake-up call on a different level for the whole freedom-loving world. Meaning the non-Jews. Not all of them, but some of them. All of a sudden they're realizing, I'll give a little example. I saw a video of a British politician in England interviewed on a program together with some like Muslim clerics or whatever about all the anti-Israel protests taking place in the streets of of London, and the British politician wasn't screaming, because Brits don't scream, but was very annoyed, very properly annoyed at the Muslim representatives and clerics, saying, "Why are you using violence against the British policemen? Why are you desecrating British monuments? If you continue to do this, you will lose our support." Okay, but what's the bottom line? Europeans and some Americans are starting to realize that this violence in the streets by this pro-genocide, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, anti-Israel movement, it's not just about the Jews. It's about destroying the Western countries as well. And not enough of our fellow non-Jews are waking up to this, but some are. And that's the truth. Now, in addition to my Pulse of Israel podcast and vlog every day, Avi and I have another entity called IsraelOnWire.com, which is more of a newsy video website, updating people again with the politically incorrect truth. And I have a video up there that I saw years ago, and it's never been more relevant for people to watch than today, to wake up to what's going on. And it's a video interview, and I think I'm talking to the right crowd. People here remember Mike Wallace back in the 1980s, right? Back in the day when media was basically ABC, NBC, and CBS. That was it, right? So Mike Wallace was interviewing a KGB defector in 1984. 1984 KGB defector named Yuri Bezmenov. And anyone who wants this video, I could send it to you. And Yuri Bezmenov told Mike Wallace in these terms: Communist Russia has already brainwashed one generation of university professors in America with socialism. 1984. When they succeed in brainwashing 3 generations of American professors in American universities, the socialist takeover of America is irreversible. He said this in 1984. He was warning America. We're way past 3 generations of professors of universities. The administrations of all these universities, especially the Ivy Leagues, totally communist. Professors, totally socialist. And very, very few conservatives left on any of these campuses, and if they are, they're in the minority. And anyone who wants tenure, and again, if you're any professors in here, forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to watch yourself, what you're writing, what you're not writing, in order to be accepted and continue on tenure track, etc., etc., etc. But again, this has been a strategy for decades. And it's not about the Jew. It's about destroying the Western world as we know it. So, again, wake-up call for the Jews in Israel. October 7th is a wake-up call for world Jewry, and it's a wake-up call for the freedom-loving world, not just us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a clear dividing line, like never before in our lives, I believe, between how people recognize or acknowledge evil. Right? There are those who see what happened in Simchat Torah. Innocent, again, I don't have to say it again, but whatever, innocent babies, women, children, horrific things done. That's evil. And especially if you're a Torah-believing Jew, I mean, you should believe. I mean, yes, we get rid of darkness by spreading light, but we also have to get rid of the evil. So we have to eradicate the evil. That's category number 1. The second category of people are those who see that evil and support it. Right? Well, university professors, the pro-Hamas, pro-genocide protests, they're supporting the evil blatantly. No shame. 2 categories. But believe it or not, I believe it's the third category that's the most dangerous. And in Hebrew we have a saying, Echad balev, echad bapeh. A person who says he says the right words, and he has another feeling in his heart. And those are those who say that what Hamas did is evil, but they don't really support eradicating it. Because it's those people, and those are the many people in power, especially politicians of many countries, including many countries we know and are fond of, that they're the ones who allow the continual perpetuation of this evil. No matter how much they say it's horrible and it must be ended, but if they don't actually allow Israel to end it, well, what good are their words? They're not good. Talking about the Palestinian Authority potentially taking over Gaza when it's blatant that the only difference between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas is just their strategy to destroy Israel. And I'll go even further. Israel, and again, I'm not saying this to depress you because I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic. But Israel has 3 geopolitical challenges in defeating Hamas, which after you hear all 3, you'll basically understand it's impossible. Okay? We're still going to do it, but it really is impossible. What are those 3 geopolitical challenges? Well, let's look after all the funding that goes to Hamas. Number 1, Iran. Where has Iran gotten billions of dollars the past decade or so? That money has also gone to Hezbollah and to Hamas. American money. Your taxpayer money has been given to Hamas and then given to Hamas, and it's given to Iran, then to Hamas and Hezbollah, to the Obama administration, and then under the Biden administration. Only Trump stopped giving money to Iran. Right? U.S. taxpayer money went to support terror. Second biggest funder of Hamas is Qatar, or in America, I think there's Qatar, right? Qatar. Okay? If we really wanted to end Hamas, we first of all, Qatar is allowing the Hamas leaders to live there, so we should be attacking them. But we should be going after Qatar. They're Hamas. Al Jazeera is Hamas. Al Jazeera is a Qatar organization. It's a media operation to destroy Israel and destroy the Western world. Al Jazeera, right? But what's the challenge? Well, America's, I think, its biggest military base is in Qatar. How is Israel supposed to attack or go after Qatar if America's base is there? And Qatar is acting as the neutral mediator for the hostage situation. How in the world do we allow this? They fund Hamas, and yet we are supposed to respect them as they are a neutral party? And I think it was Caroline Glick who said it clearly. We could have had the hostages back on day 1 if we had an American administration that would say to Qatar, you want our military base to remain in Qatar? Well, release the hostages. And not saying tell Hamas to release the hostages, but you, Qatar, release the hostages because Qatar is funding Hamas. So they're one and the same. We could have had the hostages back at the beginning. So how are we supposed to beat our enemy, Hamas, if it's being funded from these two U.S. support in a sense, unfortunately? And then we have geopolitical challenge number 2. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the influence, and I'm sure many of you are, the influence that UNRWA, the United Nations organization, has in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. UNRWA is the educational arm. It's supposed to, the schools are UNRWA schools. The educators, the teachers, they are UNRWA, paid by United Nations, paid by U.S. taxpayer money. Well, anyone just has to follow PalWatch.org, David Bedine, and Memory, and see the videos of these teachers and these students proudly talking about killing Jews and educating these children to kill Jews. It's a genocidal organization, UNRWA. And again, only President Trump was the one to pull U.S. funding from UNRWA. I had an argument with a family member, and a family member who's very anti-Trump. And I just brought up UNRWA. And they wouldn't answer me. I'm like, all Biden had to do was not renew funding to UNRWA. Like, okay, you can hate Trump and you can love Biden, but he renewed the funding. Like, don't you think that's wrong? No, they couldn't admit it because of the political aspects. Which again, I'm trying not to get political. I'm trying to be factual based here. But love the guy, support the guy. But here's a fact: he actually made a conscious decision to renew funding to UNRWA, where plenty of U.S. politicians know, and I personally, and I have videos of this, and I interviewed Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just back in March. I was in his office interviewing him. He's a co-sponsor of the bill for the U.S. to stop funding UNRWA, and I specifically spoke to him about that. So, U.S. politicians know this. They have the information. So how are we supposed to beat Hamas when our own allies are the ones who fund Hamas and fund the genocide against us? And it's wonderful when we have global leaders who say, we're fighting anti-Semitism. But excuse me, achad balev, achad bapeh. One thing to say words, another thing to action. How can you be fighting anti-Semitism on the one hand if you're funding the greatest movement of anti-Semitism that is literally massacring Jews? It doesn't go. And so hence, that category, that third category, is the most dangerous category. But again, it's the dividing line for humanity today. Mila Hashem Elai. Who's acknowledging that there's evil and who is not? And the only ones who are truly acknowledging the evil today are those who understand it has to be eradicated to make sure that the good in the world flourishes and not the bad. Now I want to give across a story that encapsulates the whole Middle East. And it never gets told. The messages of this story never gets told. And this is a story that happened on my own Shabbat table. Anyone here familiar with the Nativ program in the IDF? The Nativ program is the conversion program. Right? Because Israel has a lot of mostly Russians and Ukrainians who've come over the years who are not halachically Jewish. So while they're serving the IDF gives them the opportunity to learn about Judaism and then go through the conversion process if they decide to do so. So part of that program is they spend the Shabbat at a Shomer Shabbat home, a community to experience. So sometimes they come to Efrat and we host these soldiers. So one time we had 5 male soldiers at our Shabbat table, hosting them for Shabbat. And again, they're usually Russian or Ukrainian, so you go around the table Friday night, what's your name? Igor, Maxim, all these names. Come to the guy right opposite me, sitting on the other side of the Shabbat table. What's your name? Muhammad. Like, whoa. Wow. All right, Muhammad, where are you from? Right? I expected to hear Akko, Haifa, Natzrat, Yerushalayim, right? Gaza. I'm like, wait a second. I have an Arab Muslim from Gaza serving the IDF, converting to be a Jew at my Shabbat table? Muhammad, what's your story? And Muhammad told me his story. He said the following. He said, my father was an employee of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. Right? The Palestinian Authority was given control over Gaza after Israel expelled the 10,000 Jews and destroyed the 21 Jewish communities in Gaza. Then in 2007, Hamas had a military coup. Right? Literally throwing Palestinian Authority officials off of roofs and murdering them. So Muhammad's father's life was in danger. And he understood that Hamas was a problem. So he secretly started helping Israel with targets of Hamas in Gaza. So his life and the life of his family was even in more danger. So the Jewish state of Israel secretly smuggled Muhammad and his whole family into Israel and gave them citizenship so they can be safe and have life. So I'm like, wow, it's an unbelievable story, but why serve in the Israeli army? You don't have to serve in the Israeli army. And Muhammad told me the following. He goes, you don't understand. All my life, I was taught that the Jews want to kill us. And the Jews are evil. And here, I ended up finding out that it's the Jewish state of Israel that saved my life. And it's my own brothers and family members and neighbors that were trying to kill me. As an act of appreciation, me and all my brothers, he was the youngest of 4 boys, They all served in the Israeli army. So then I said to Muhammad, I mean, that's amazing, and wow, and thank you. But why convert? It's not easy to be a Jew, like 2,000 years of persecution and like 613 mitzvot. Like, you could be a Noahide, you don't have to convert. You could be a good person, you don't have to convert. He goes, no, you don't understand. I was taught all my life that the Jewish people and the Judaism, it's teaching, and they're evil, and that Islam is right. And I ended up learning that my religion, Islam, sanctifies death, and your religion sanctifies life. Me and all 3 of my brothers wanted to convert in order to be part of the Jewish people, and they all converted. And I remember one of the happiest days of his life, he called me, was the day that he passed the Beit Din and converted and became a Jew. That one little story encapsulates the whole truth of the reality of the Middle East and the Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel and our conflict that never gets told by the media, that hardly gets told by even our own organizations and educational institutions. That one little story tells it all. One of the things I like to tell people, and in my programs I try to repeat it so people actually internalize it, is the following simple fact, and if anyone can prove me wrong, please do. The most blessed Arab Muslim in the Middle East is the one that lives in the Jewish state of Israel. Because it's only in Israel where you can have a Sunni Muslim, a Shiite Muslim, a gay Muslim, an atheist Muslim, a female Muslim, live with freedom, equality, and prosperity together with a Jew, a Christian, a Baha'i, everything. That does not exist in any other Arab Muslim country in the Middle East. If you're a Sunni living in a Shiite country, you're persecuted by the Shiites. You're a Shiite living in a Sunni country, you're persecuted by the Sunnis. Women don't have equality and rights. Gays are thrown off of roofs. Atheists are killed. You're a Jew, you're a Yazidi, you're a Druze, you're persecuted. A Christian, you're persecuted. Only in the Jewish state of Israel. But yet, us as a Jewish people, we have such low self-esteem and such low self-confidence. We're always trying to defend ourselves. No, we want peace. No, we're okay. No, we try our best to do this. I'm sorry it's not equal. I'm sorry we do this to the Arabs. I'm sorry this happened. Where's the story of, guys, we're a blessing to any Arab who wants to live with us. Be my guest. Accept this blessing and live with us peacefully. You don't want to live with us peacefully? Gesundheit. Go live in a country you agree with. Where's our messaging? That's not the messaging that we're even giving over ourselves in our own communities, our own organizations. We're always on the defensive, always dealing with the newest lie. They're always on the offensive. Today's argument is not just that October 7th really didn't happen, or maybe it happened, or maybe it's all AI, so don't believe the pictures and the videos. Their narrative, they go on the offensive. They go, no. Hamas is not the terrorist entity. Israel is the terrorist state. For 75 years, Israel's the terrorist state. They're never on the defensive. They deflect the defensive and they make up more lies to go on the offensive, which makes our Jewish world go more on the defensive. And what's our education to our children, our youth about? Well, this is what really happened, so this is how you defend it. This is what really happened, this is how you defend it. And where's the pride saying, oh my God, what I want our Jewish students to be saying on college campus is the following. I'm a Jew. I am part of the only indigenous people in the whole world that after thousands of years of oppression and persecution and exile, we have been blessed to return to be sovereign in our ancestral homeland. The only indigenous people. The Indians are jealous of us. And seriously, I had a conversation this Wednesday with a Navajo Indian. I'm jealous of the Jews, she told me. Of course she's jealous of the Jews. The Navajo, they're probably never going to get their ancestral lands back and have sovereignty over their ancestral land. We did! Why should our Jewish students feel that they're second-class citizens and that we're their oppressors? We don't play the victim Olympics. We are victors. We overcame our oppression. These Jewish students should be on campus telling their professors, you should be celebrating the Jewish people. Everything you talk about that you believe in, oppressed, oppressor, you're ignoring the Jewish story. We should be celebrated. We're the poster child of overcoming oppression. An inspiration to everyone in every group you talk about so passionately. How many of our youth have that understanding within themselves to be able to say that besides really feel it and feel the pride in it? They're not, because it's not given over to them. Because they're always just being fed information to be on the defensive. Well, it's time we go on the offensive. It's time our kids, our youth, our collegiates be proud Jews and go on the offensive. I want to end with the following personal story. And then if there are any questions, b'simcha. When I was a soldier, I returned home one Shabbat. And for whatever reason, I started rummaging through the boxes of my parents that they still hadn't unpacked since our Aliyah a few years earlier. And I came upon homework assignments from when I was in elementary school. For whatever reason, my mother kept them, right? And I pulled out a homework assignment from 4th grade when I was a student at Manhattan Day School in Manhattan, right? MDS, right? Pretty simple homework assignment. 10-year-old boy, 4th grade. Pretty simple. Write down your 3 dreams in life. That's it. You can't really fill that one. And I looked at what I wrote down as a 10-year-old. Again, I'm 19 years old at the time looking at this. What did I write down as a 10-year-old Avi Abelow? Dream number 1, I want to make Aliyah. Dream number 2, I want to serve in the Israeli army. Dream number 3, I want to be really rich so I can give a lot of tzedakah. So Baruch Hashem, I succeeded in fulfilling the first 2. I'm still working on the 3rd. But I had to ask myself, who was this 10-year-old boy to already have those dreams? And in that order. And first of all, Baruch Hashem, thankfully I grew up in a generation that didn't have these. So when I was bored, I used to read. Right? And I loved history. So I loved reading books of history. Tanakh, Bible history, Jewish history, Holocaust history, American history, Civil War history, Indians, cowboys, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington. I was a real history buff even as a little kid. And obviously, the internalizing of learning history made a deep, deep impression on me even as a 10-year-old boy. And that was the understanding of how blessed we were as a Jewish people to be living in a generation where we're once again sovereign in our ancestral homeland and have the ability to live there. And once again able to stand up and defend ourselves as a people, something that my grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents for 2,000 years that we did not have the ability to do. Hence, I teach all 4 of my boys, who I know all 4 will serve, that even though it is mandatory law to serve in the Israeli army, to me, I look at that not as mandatory, but as a privilege. Privilege that our grandparents and great-grandparents, etc., did not have. Hence, even though I'm 50 years old and I could have stopped serving in Miluim, I reserved duty 10 years ago, I continue. And as I tell my commanders, so long as I have added value to the unit and I'm not a burden because of my age and my physical state, I'm continuing as long as I can. I will not give up on this privilege. And the final message to connect it all together is just trying to give over to each and every one of you. Tell your kids, tell your grandkids, the present and the future of the Jewish people is in our homeland. Tell yourselves, tell your spouses. And even though anti-Semitism is growing, and yes, the day will come while even American Jewry will have to start picking up in droves and coming back home to Israel because they're running away, I don't want Jews to run away. I want Jews to come because they know they're coming home and able to be part of the spiritual revolution that we, the Jewish people today, blessed to be living in the Holy Land of Israel, are experiencing. And I promise you this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking, and the sooner more committed, proudly Jews return to Israel, the sooner we will be able to overcome our internal challenges as well. Because it's a numbers game. It's a democracy. And so long as the numbers are still lower of proudly committed Jews in Israel, well, we're always going to be fighting politically in order to make the influence to make Israel the proud Jewish state we want it to be. And whenever people complain to me about the state of Israel, which put aside the Meraglim issue for a second, because that's also true, but put that aside, because there are plenty of complaints. And I say this especially to Israelis that left Israel and are living in America today. Plenty of complaints. But my one ta'ana, my one claim is internalizing. We are not supposed to live in our homeland Israel because of any government. Sometimes we like a government, sometimes we don't like a government. Regardless. We're not supposed to live in Israel because it's the perfect place. No. We're supposed to live in Israel in order to be part of the process to make it be the Or Lagoyim it's supposed to be. That's the challenge. And when I talk to people who are planning Aliyah or making Aliyah, I say, you didn't finish your journey. Making Aliyah is the first step of your journey. Because it's then when you're in Israel living there, that's where the real work begins, together with Am Yisrael, to build it up, to be the Or Lagoyim that we're supposed to make it be. Be'ezrat Hashem, may we all pray for the good and the health of our Jewish state of Israel, of all our holy soldiers fighting an evil that is very hard. Very, very hard. My son is in Gaza, just came home for Shabbat with his friends. It's not a situation we want to be in, but keep on being part of the Geula, and the role of American Jewry today is extremely important because it's understanding we are one. And I know plenty of you are probably also involved, whether donating or buying or shipping. And I look at equipment or doing stuff for Chayalim or for Israeli families, and I look at that as the positive, because we're no longer outsourcing our responsibility to a government or to leaders or to an organization, but Am Yisrael is taking responsibility for ourselves. It's also part of that spiritual process. So keep on praying, keep on doing, and I look forward to welcoming you all in Eretz Yisrael, B'ezrat Hashem.
Forward-looking, there's this Hashem when Hamas is eradicated and this battle is over. Do you have any insight or personal opinion of what Gaza is going to look like and what Eretz Yisrael, what their plans are in the future?
I can answer a real politic answer, and I can answer a non-real politic answer. Let me start by saying this. Believe it or not, today, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but the communities that were devastated the most, Kibbutz Re'im, Kibbutz Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Nir Oz, those communities are some of the bastions of the most leftist, pro-peace movements, even some of the founders of those movements. And they were the ones hit the most, massacred, families massacred, kidnapped. Again, I don't know, just to give some details for those who do not know. Again, literally the founders of Breaking the Silence organizations, that they go into Gaza to help the Arabs in Gaza, that they help Gazans get medical treatment in Israel. Like, again, I'm going to look at them, Dan Lakavskut, like they're pure souls. They're pure souls who they want to do good and they think that's doing good. Right? Dan Lakavskut. They were the ones massacred and mostly affected. Not only, but mostly. Today, some of the voices from those communities are more kahana than kahana. Meaning they've been so shocked by how their goodness has been reciprocated, that some of them are literally saying, I'm not moving back to my community until Gaza is a parking lot and not one Arab is in Gaza. That's not a right-wing settler like me, or I like to call myself a right-wing resettler like me, but those are some of the leftists of the left from those communities. Not all of them, but plenty of them. They've been shook hard. So that's one perspective. Meaning they literally might not move there unless there's no Arab left in Gaza. And the real politic, unfortunately, because of the geopolitical situation and of what type of leaders we have today, our leaders are talking about potentially another Arab, Muslim, new organization being in charge somehow, some shape. I think I'm the realist when I say that again, and I said this earlier, when I said the Israelis are not going to move back until they believe there's no fear whatsoever again, which means that there cannot be another Arab self-rule in Gaza. If you ask me, and this is what I say in my program, IDF's not leaving. Can't leave. Can't leave, no matter the world pressure. And it's going to come down hard, like a hammer. But the Israeli people, as a people, and to understand that people won't move down there unless they're not afraid anymore, that's only going to happen if the IDF remains there. And I'm going to continue being my optimistic self. And I think I'm the realist. And again, I don't know how many people agree with me, disagree with me, and that's fine, but I'm the one talking with my opinion, right? We're going to go back. We're going to resettle the Gaza Strip. When? How? Tomorrow? Half a year? 2 years? 10 years? I don't know. But because ultimately we're only going to have a safe Israel when we're in total control of the Gaza Strip. We resettle the Gaza Strip because ultimately we have to go back to the old security strategy that remains true till today. Meaning it was a labor government that established the communities in the Gaza Strip. I don't know how many of you remember this. I mean, you remember, if you remember the context. Yitzhak Rabin was at the groundbreaking ceremony of the first Jewish community, Netzer Chazani, in the Gaza Strip in 1973. It was a labor government because it was a security strategy to best protect Israel. The army had to be in the Gaza Strip. In order that the army be able to do its job to protect Israel, it must have civilian population living in the Gaza Strip. So that's from the security perspective. So I believe I'm the realist when I say, yeah, the army's never going to leave. No matter what politicians say, no matter what the American government pressures, or the international community pressures, and eventually we're going to be resettling. And again, because it's come from the people. And it's not just going to be coming from the right, it's going to be coming from the left, which that's the real change of the political situation today in Israel. And I just want to remind people about this, because this is very important. I'm not just talking from a security perspective. Everyone here likes singing Yaribon every once in a while on Friday nights? Right? Who wrote Yaribon? Rav Natan Me'aza. Huh?
He would live till he was buried there.
Okay? And that's 500 years ago, and anyone who learned Daf Yomi and Gemara, there are plenty of rabbis in the Gemara who lived in Gaza also. Meaning the Jewish people, and obviously we have Yitzchak and Abraham, right? So we have a Jewish connection to Gaza. And there are those who even say that it's part of Eretz Yisrael. So not just from a security perspective, but from an Am Yisrael perspective, returning to our homeland, in order to do good for all the world, we will be back there. When, how, what's going to happen in the world to allow us to finally do that? No clue. But if you ask me, I really believe we're not going to be leaving. Bezrat Hashem. What? No, before Mashiach. Before Mashiach. I shouldn't say way before Mashiach. Bezrat Hashem, Mashiach should come tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem, Barach Shemo. But in the meantime, no connection to Mashiach. We're going to be in there. So that's my answer. But again, what you're going to be hearing in the news is the pressure to pull out. And even Israeli politicians talking about the solutions are in order to placate world pressure. But the Israeli people, we can't leave. Yes.
I'm curious. Has Rabbi Riskin commented on what's going on? Is he still very vocal? He used to really believe that if we only learned Arabic and we can communicate with them and we can become friends with them, and everything will be hunky-dory.
I can't talk for Rabbi Riskin. He hasn't been vocal lately. I think that's because of personal issues. But I will tell you the answer to your question. And the answer to your question? Huh? Oh, sorry. The question was, has Rabbi Riskin been vocal about this? Because Rabbi Riskin was always a voice of coexistence, supporting coexistence. And if we only learned Arabic and were able to talk to them. First of all, I'm a big believer of learning Arabic. I told all my boys to learn Arabic. The problem is Israeli schools, even when they teach Arabic, they teach literature Arabic, not spoken Arabic. So literature Arabic doesn't do anything in order to understand the cashier cursing us out at the Rami Levy supermarket, which actually happens. Right? So yes, it's extremely important that we know Arabic. Because we, the Jewish people, we're at a disadvantage. The Arabs know Hebrew, we don't know Arabic. Right? That's the other shift that I hope what's happening today on the spiritual level also happens on the practical level. Because too many Jews in Israel, we've been westernized. So we look at Israel as a Western outpost in the Middle East, which is wrong. We're not Westerners, we're Jews. We're Jews from the Middle East. We're supposed to be returning to our ancestral identity. We are a tribe, we are the 12 tribes. The Middle East is a tribal culture. We have to return to our ancestral identity, which is what's unbelievable today, because you see such a difference between the youth in Israel and the youth in America. The youth in all of Israel today, again, besides the tiny minority trying to demoralize us, all of Israel today is 110% support behind this war effort, understanding that literally there is no innocent civilians in Gaza. We do not want to hurt anyone. But if they're sticking around to protect terrorists, when we warn them to leave, then we're not going to cry if they die. And then there's a pride, there's a King David spirit of the Jewish people in the land of Israel today that is not found as much here. Hence you could see where our natural habitat is and where it's natural to be bringing up our kids to be proud Jews. So that's part of the spiritual revolution we're going through as a people, and internalizing, we live in the Middle East. We have to act like we live in the Middle East. And I'm a big chassid of Dr. Mordechai Kedar, and I'm sure people here are familiar with him. I interview him all the time, an expert on Islam in the Middle East. And his solution is simple. His message is simple. He goes, folks, this is the Middle East. You know when we're going to have peace? When our enemies are so afraid to lift a pinky against us. That's it. That's the Middle East. So we read the Torah every Shabbat. We learn Tanakh, right? And we think it's not fairy tales. It's our Torah. It's our history. We think it's thousands of years ago. That reality still exists today. We're the ones disconnected from that reality. We have to go back and relive our reality from the Tanakh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us that land. It's not simple. We have enemies who surround us, and we have to stand up for ourselves to survive. And when we survive and thrive, we help all of humanity. When we run away from our Jewish identity, when we show weakness and don't stand up to our enemies with a misunderstanding of the world and reality, then we do a disservice to ourselves and to humanity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for us to own ourselves. And I'll give a little caveat, another story here. So I was studying at Columbia University in 2000 for my graduate degree, organizational psychology, and I was in a conflict resolution course, 2000. And this conflict resolution course was in like an auditorium of like 1,000 students, right? One of those big courses like everyone had to go to, right? And it was during the time of the Camp David Accords, right? That's when President Clinton had Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak to try to bring peace. So, conflict resolution, this professor was teaching us all semester, how do you resolve conflict between different cultures? Pshita. You have to have each culture understand the other culture. Only after there's an understanding, then can a mediator mediate and come to a resolution. To the level that this was seriously what he taught. You have to know, do you use a fork? Do you use a spoon in that culture? Do you look in the eyes? Do you not look in the eyes? Like, to that level of detail of understanding cultures, only after that is achieved, then can a mediator mediate conflict. So the professor starts saying, and we're having the Camp David Accords taking place right now, and we're going to see peace in our time. Wonderful. And of course everyone's happy, clapping. So I raise my hand. I said, and again, auditorium of 1,000 students. I raise my hand. The professor calls on me. I said, Professor, according to everything you've been teaching us each semester, I can promise you, they're going to fail. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, because you're talking about a peace process that is a Western, cultural-minded process without any understanding of the culture of the Middle East. So it's going to fail according to everything you've been teaching us all semester. So he screams at me in front of the whole auditorium of students. A week later, fell apart. You think I got an apology? No apology. Okay. So again, what? Did he fail me? I don't remember. Back then it wasn't as bad as today. I don't know if you know. You didn't know my name. I'm 1,000 students. I'm just a hand that went up. No, but the bottom line is, one, everything we've been experiencing for decades has been an imposition of Western cultural attitudes to a conflict that is foreign to Western thought. The Middle East is the Middle East. So it's been Western imperialism being imposed upon us, and hence it fails time after time after time. A two-state solution is a Western solution. It's going to fail. It doesn't work. But more important to me than the geopolitical aspect is the message for us Jews, that we have to re-own our identity as a tribal culture indigenous to the land of Israel. We're not Westerners. We're Jews. We're not Westerners. We're not Easterners. We're Jews. We have our own unique identity. How many Yidden today really understand that? Forget about youth. How many adults today? I mean, you talk to most adults, live in Britain, I'm British. French, I'm French. American, I'm American. And very Western. Very Western, because we've been in Golas for years, so we're very Western. So what we're experiencing today, what we should be experiencing today, is returning to we have to relearn. We have to relearn what it means to be a Yid living in our natural habitat. And I don't have the textbook in front of me to teach you how to do that. But it's happening naturally by us living there. And it's a natural process. We're not there yet, we have a long way to go. But the process is happening, and it's connected to the spiritual process.
The question goes, what was the population of the Gaza before it started?
What was the population of the Gaza before it started? Well, I'll answer you in this way. And as people, again, when people feel...
That's not the only question.
What? Not the only question? Well, before you continue to ask a question, I just want to do something, because if anyone is interested in either signing up or donating to help with the work we're doing, I just want to put something out to help people donate to us or sign up. So I'm just going to put this out there. It's in my bag in this in the pocket that's closest to me, the pieces of paper. So thank you. I'm going to answer your question like this. Huh? Yeah, you go. I'll answer your question like this, because people say that Israel is committing genocide. Wait a second. I'm answering you like this. The population in Gaza today, before this happened, was around 2 million. That's what they say. If we know, we have no clue, because it's Hamas numbers, right? So we don't know the exact numbers. But a number we do know is that the population of Arab Muslims in Gaza in 1967, when we, the Jewish state of Israel, liberated the Gaza Strip from the Egyptians, was around 394,000. So anyone today who says that Israel has been committing genocide, no, I'm just giving the greater context because it's important for people to know. They should know those numbers to be able to say, well, if Israel's committing genocide, we're really bad at it because we've allowed them to grow tremendously over the decades. The official numbers from Hamas about how many have been killed in Gaza since they launched this war against us with the massacre on Simchat Torah on October 7th is around 20,000, maybe now 21,000.
Second question. The military, what you're saying is going to stay there, God willing, it's going to be repopulated with the kibbutzim. What happens with the people, whatever number that might be, whatever happens with them, they're potential terrorists, we all know that. You explained it. There is no country around Israel, no Muslim country that wants a single one of those people.
What's the question?
The question is, again, the future of the Gaza. Yes, the military going to stay.
Okay, so I'm a big believer that every once in a while. Oh, the question was understanding that after this war, there are still potential terrorists within the Gaza Arab Muslim population. How do we deal with that, right? In a sense. So I'm a big believer in truly holding on, by being realistic, but also holding on to our emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? And I'm going to answer it like this. I prefaced it like this. 3 months ago, if I would have told you, what's your name? Mila. If I would have told you, Mila, the IDF has to attack the Hamas base under Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Right? If I would have told you that 3 months ago, or anybody, everyone would have said, you're crazy. Never going to happen. It happened. Totally irrational, non-politically correct. No Israeli government would have ever done it. The Israeli army for decades has been afraid to do anything substantive in Gaza to really take out Hamas. So hence, that was not realistic. And today, where are we at? We're at a total different reality where the Israeli army is totally in Gaza doing what needs to be done, where 3 months ago would have been considered impossible. So I'm a believer in the impossible because I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How it will happen, when it will happen, I don't know. And this isn't Avi Abelow talking, but Nikki Haley recently said herself. The answer is, since those Gaza Arab Muslims do not believe in the values of the Jewish state of Israel, they should live in countries of the values that they do believe in. No. Okay, no one wanted to attack Gaza 3 months ago. Things happen. Things are dynamic. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. But the just and moral solution was said by Nikki Haley, not by Avi Abelow. When it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, Don't know. If it's going to be all of them, don't know. There's going to be many of them, if not most of them. Listen, the Torah gave us the solution. The Torah is clear. There's 3 steps to achieving peace. You offer peace, and if peace is taken, then you make peace with them. If peace is not taken, they go to war. Then you kill those who go to war with you, and only those who decide to be ger toshav end up staying with you. Tanakh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very clear with us in the Torah about how we have peace in the Holy Land of Israel. When it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, can take 50 years. I don't know. That's why I was saying we're still in the we're in the 76th year of the War of Independence. But the important thing is, Am Yisrael and the land of Israel have woken up. So we're awake. Okay. Let me end with this one miraculous story, right? Because we're living miracles. And listen, I grew up in New York, so I'm a Mets fan, so you gotta believe. All right? For good or for bad, I'm still a Mets fan. And you gotta believe. On Simchat Torah, and I'm not getting into the details now, for whatever reasons, the Israeli army was not there to protect the people. Okay? Very sad on many levels. But the reality is that hundreds, if not, I don't know how many specific, individual, proud, King David-like Jews, instead of their natural instinct to run away from a fire, they ran into a fire. I have my own friends or people I know. Whether they got into uniform, they didn't get into uniform. They had a gun, they didn't have a gun. They drove down into the inferno of evil to fight the Hamas terrorists. Where's the miracle? And this is a tough pill to chew on. But believe it or not, the miracle is that only 1,200 Jews were massacred on Simchat Torah. If we wouldn't have had hundreds of proud King David-like Jews today in Israel who risked their own lives to go down there, they didn't wait to be called up from the army, they didn't wait for a commander to tell them what they did, they all did it individually and then fought like lions. And many of them lost their lives. And they saved thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives. That's a miracle. So we're living with lots of miracles. So I like talking about analyzing reality and the real politic, but never forget what HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do for us. When we have no clue. We're not supposed to be somech on the nes. We're not somech on the nes. We're fighting to defend ourselves. But every once in a while, he pulls out a nes for us. That doesn't mix with reality or real politics. So that's the answer I can give. Okay. So wait, does anyone else have a question before you give your third? All right, go for it. You're on, Mila.
We have to down the Marv now, so you can continue. Anybody has any further questions? Anybody wants to go up and down the Marv upstairs? Stay here. 10 o'clock now. Upstairs in the basement.
Yeah. A lot of parents.
Sorry, a lot of parents are afraid of their children's life safety on campus. A lot of Jewish parents. I would like to know how old that anti-Semitism. I wasn't born in this. You can probably know. I don't know how old that anti-Semitism on campus started. Because in no working place, in no company, something like that, something that open and so deep, would not be allowed. And we have it in our Constitution that people cannot be. I mean, I might be naive that no people should be persecuted because of their race or religion, and yet we have this garbage happening on the campuses. How did it start? Who feeds this garbage to those people?
Where are you from originally?
Yes.
Soviet Union?
Yeah.
listen, the whole, familiar with DEI, diversity, equality, inclusion, it's taking over not just campuses, it's taking over corporations, it's taking over everything. It's becoming the DNA of America right now. It's been worked on by the socialists, like I said, for decades. So it's not, and unfortunately, caring for the Jew is thrown into the garbage. We're the lowest on the totem pole. I was just in Phoenix and I was talking to an educator whose woman is a corporate lawyer in a major firm, and he was explaining to me how she has to leave the firm because the firm has a whole DEI department, and because she's Jewish and a woman, she's on like the bottom of the totem pole, and she's totally discriminated against. She's a top lawyer, and she's never going to become partner because of these new regulations that are running U.S. corporations. So it's way beyond universities. And it's beyond Jews. This is something that's about destroying the Constitution of America without having to change the Constitution of America. You understand how deep this is? So if people think that this could be overturned, with each day, with each month, with each year, it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And again, it's been a strategy for decades. Again, Yuri Bezmenov spoke about this in 1984. 1984! 40 years ago! They've been working on this at least for 40, probably 50 years, because he said they already had one generation of university professors. So the Jewish world's waking up to the growth of anti-Semitism too late. It is much too late. We're way beyond the 8 ball. Way beyond. And the American people are way beyond the 8 ball also, because they don't understand that this has been a strategy for decades to take down the West. And whenever any country goes through a process to be taken down, who's the canary in the coal mine that gets hit first? Right? But I'm not here. I don't want to scare people. I'm giving the analysis of the reality as I understand it. And like I said before, I believe you have to be a student of Jewish history. Every successful galut came to an end. Every successful assimilated galut came to an end. The Abarbanel was the top advisor to Queen Isabella, and then the Spanish Golden Age ended. We assimilated into Germany, and then the Nazis came. Every single part of our history, we assimilated successfully, and then came a downfall. I'm just being a student of history here. We are witnessing today in America a repeat of Jewish history, but I don't want people to be scared of the anti-Semitism that's growing here, and because of that, run to Israel. I want people to run to Israel because they understand how blessed they are to be Jews, and to come home to the land of Israel and have their children grow up there and have their grandchildren grow up there, to be proud Jews because they want to be proud Jews in their ancestral homeland, not because they're running away. So I want to make sure that's the ultimate message. You made a great point. Great point. I believe there's one major difference, though. Israeli society is at a different place than it was post-1967, in terms of numbers. Meaning, in 1967, both on a societal level and on a political level, the more proud, committed Jewish identity public in Israel was still a very, very small minority. Today we're a much bigger percentage of the population, And as well, the traditional population of Israel is that much bigger and stronger. So you could be right. I'm not a Navi. I'm giving my analysis, and I really believe that we're at a different place. And because of how I just explained it, why this time it will be different. And I hope I'm right and not you. But you could be.
Okay, I understand. There are few things I don't agree with you, but...
B'simcha. B'simcha. Anyone else? Amen. 2 Jews, 3 synagogues, right? Thank you, everybody.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.